What's up, everybody? It's Matt 10. I've got sliders here for you. I've got legendary sliders, 15 minutes on slow. The number one thing wrong with FIFA 15 is the pace of play. I mean, it's crazy archaic. There's really no way else to put that. Um, so my goal here is to get the pace of play down the realistic way. I want to make sure, that there's a chance for everything to happen. Not so much that the computer's attack is so linear, not to the point that the user has to be linear with their attack. But more importantly, it's about the foundation of these two values right here: sprint speed and acceleration. This is what kind of makes this happen. And then third is definitely this right here. This pass error for the computer is 95. Okay, I know that sounds crazy. Be that as it may, you cannot defend the computer well enough on this level, or even on the other levels, to be able to basically to not have to compensate for everything else. And that's kind of how the sliders work. I'm working on just trying to get everything right. So you see this line height. I'll go by one. Let's go ahead and actually do that. We'll start with the user side. You got 20, 46. That's the same with the computer side as well. Shot error is 52 each. Pass error user is 55. And then you've got the computer's 95. Okay. The reason it's 95 is because you have to have a chance to deflect, passes, intercept passes. The computer by default just passes as they will, anywhere, perfectly, down the sides, making passes like Arteta or Modric, they're just solid, plays, and there's nothing you can do about that. On top of that, it moves a mile a minute on default, so I don't know how anybody can play that. And there's, of course, a high demand right now for sliders, on the sim sites that I'm on, like Operation Sports, Evo Web, and soccer gaming as well. It's important because you got to enjoy the game, and so many people just can't accept the default level, and I can't either. I racked my brain really hard on this because it was probably the toughest thing I've had to do in terms of slider creating, or slider modifying. It's such a balancing act, and I'll explain that a little bit more here with shot speed and pass speed. They're both the same, 48 and 35. Shot speed, you'll see some pretty nice shots, a lot of power. Really shows a lot of the differential between players that can't really hit the ball as solid, but those who can. So like you got like your Tom Huddleston, he can hit a vicious ball, as anybody knows, and so that's nice to see. And then you've got the keeper. I'll put it down here because frequency of injury and severity is 70 and 35. So goalkeeper ability is at 20. I've got that at 20. It's definitely low, but also makes those keepers not superhuman. I know there's issues with the keepers. Sometimes the ball goes right at them, but I think that had a lot to do with shot speed at 50. So that's the big issue there, and this has kind of been remedied with this goalkeeper ability. On top of that, when crosses come in, and in corners as well, there's a good chance that the keeper is going to be blocked out, or they're not always going to be able to get the ball out of the air, which is realistic because crosses come in, they're dangerous, and the keeper, if it's a good cross, they shouldn't always have a shot to get it, or at least get it cleanly. So next we're going to look at marking. Marking has been cluster what, because it's just so frustrating with how they built this game. All of it is gone in the sense of marking zonally. Okay, zone marking. It's basically gone in this version. FIFA 14 did it really well, but FIFA 15, it's just man marking completely. They don't even need to put in the marking value here. They just put in marking for man marking, honestly, because if you notice on replays, you'll see your defender or whoever is defending somebody they'll be looking right at their mark the whole time. This isn't a set piece. That shouldn't happen. You can still mark your man, if he goes into your zone. Doesn't mean you get pulled out of position and follow him the entire length of the pitch or the width of the pitch. This is why you're seeing such easy, quote-unquote, team goals that you see the even lower leagues scoring. Why? Because they're pulling your men out of position. And that's the problem on default. And then, you look at my value here, Matt, why do you have it so high? Well, I'll explain why. Marking with the user's 80, and I have to keep switching back here, is the computer's at 75. Biggest difference there is purely because you have to be realistic with how they're going to defend the ball. Okay, are they going to focus on just their man the entire time, or how can we get them to the point where there's going to be more men around to mark? Okay, I know that you need more players around you to mark, so that way, in a sense, it's like trapping the code that it's going to be zonally marked. Okay, I know that sounds weird, but hear me out with the following. Run frequency. I had it at 0-0 at one point. 20 is really nice, especially with that pass error, because now the computer's like trying to figure out who to pass to. So their passing percentage goes down. And then they also end up making bad passes because they don't know who to pass to. And that's the same for the user as well, but that's how depends how skilled you are and everything. I play full manual, which means manual everything except for keeper. I use that assisted. I don't care to use a keeper. But here we go with line height. Line height, line length, line width. These three are probably the most important values within this slider set, and I would say overall within this game. If you don't have line height higher than line length, you're going to see end-to-end action all game long, and that's not realistic. And there's no way for the defenders to get in position to defend at all. And the reason why I have it this high is because on default, if you look at the replays, no matter what tactics you use, your defensive line or the computer's defensive line, they're all the way near their penalty box. And on the attack, that's not realistic at all. So what happens is when you turn over possession, or the computer turns over possession, nobody's there to mark them once they get past that, that midfield. Okay? Because your defenders are just hanging back, waiting for them to come at them. And if they're surging forward, 50 run frequency and everything, perfect passing, it's a recipe for disaster on any level. Okay? So that's very important. Line length is also important. You want to keep it not at default at 50 because there's just too much room. There's just too much room, between, and you need your midfield to drop back just a little bit so they can help those defenders. The defenders can take care of their own, but you need your midfielders to do their part as well to drop back, which is realistic. It's not the forwards defending the whole time. It's not the defenders, defending the whole time. Most of the time, the game of soccer and football is in the midfield, and that's not how it is on default. Okay, the physical play they introduced this year is fantastic, but it's not going to be seen if you don't have settings that are similar to this, where the height is higher than the length. Lastly, width. If anything, this is the one value I'm still tweaking because it's so sensitive with marking at 80 and 75. And don't tell me, oh Matt, just change your marking. No, it doesn't work that way. If I change marking, everything goes out of whack. If I go marking to 50, what ends up happening is that, and you can see it on replays, is that it goes back to ADD. And I'll explain. ADD is attention deficit defending. Okay? Everybody wants to be marked. Okay? Basically, it's man marking to the max. And on 50, it's almost passively marking. So your defenders and their great position and height here, they don't actually go to the attacker. They're not on their butts, They're not right behind them. And, I played soccer for a long time, and I know as an attacker, when I played forward, my tailbone was beat up, from defenders' knees kicking me in to when I was posting up. And that needs to happen here. And it doesn't happen if you don't have a high marking setting. And the line height doesn't even matter if you have this at 50 or below. So That's why we have it at 80 and 75 respectively. But width is very important, and it's one I'm still tweaking because the width is determined also on the line, on the width of the defensive line. Okay, the defensive line is just wide open on 50 for some reason. The line width, when you raise it though, it doesn't. It does affect the defensive line, but remember we've got line length lower than line height, so the midfield drops back, right? And so they end up marking the players that are in the width, so the wide midfielders, the defensive, the cams, so they mark them just a little bit better. So that gives your defensive line to cave in just a bit, meaning they just tighten up just a little bit, so that way you have enough room to go ahead, and make a defensive play. And then you got pass error on top of that for the computer, and then they end up, there's a good chance that you'll get the ball, or if you defend really well. But teams are really good. Overall, I want to just show you guys how this looks. This is the same with the computer here. Fullback positioning is the last thing, or next to first touch control. Fullback positioning at 60 is very important as well, because you get those defenders that are coming up, right? And if you keep this at 50, they're not going to move up with the defensive line on the attack. Now, why would that be important if we want to defend? Well, if on transition and your defender, is set for maybe a lower fullback position down to 50 or even 40, 30, something like that, they're going to be passive and they're going to just go back to their zone, or back to their spot. And then so if the ball ends up on their side, they're not going to go after it, right? But if they're in a position of attack and we lose the ball or you lose the ball, at least you'll have a defender nearby who's in that defensive position to make a play on it. So that even builds more midfield. Lastly, first touch control. 60 for the user and 65 for the computer. You watch all the leagues, all the Premier Leagues, the ball comes at players and they can't control it that well. On default they can do it so well, but in real life that's not possible. There's a lot of pressure. You add in the pressure of these settings, there's even more pressure to control the ball and make a difference, and try to hold on to it and make a play. So that's how we have it, guys. I'd love your feedback on these. Try them out. Try them on Legendary. I know you may not think you're good enough or worthy enough, but try them out. I'm still working on a world-class set. I believe just punching these in on world-class can work. There might be something I need to modify, but I'll be taking a look at that next. As always, guys, if you have anything, please make sure to like this video. As you know, I'm probably the only sim gamer, I swear, who's doing YouTube videos. I think it's crazy. I watch all the great YouTube, guys that are really just into their career modes, but not really looking like they should in the sense of what's real life. But I've been harping that same song and sound like a broken record, so that'll be the last I mention it, I promise. In the meantime, guys, stay tuned. I'm gonna have my career mode coming out soon. I'm not gonna say who I'm using yet, but I think it'll be fun. I'll give you one hint though. I'm not going into lower divisions like I always do. So stay tuned, guys, and take care.